The film opens in 1857, deep in the North Pole, where a freezing wind drags across an endless sheet of ice. A ship sits locked in place, trapped by a thick wall of frozen water that has risen around the hull like a prison. The crew fights it through the day, hacking at the ice with axes, trying to free the vessel before the weather turns worse. When night falls, the captain walks the deck with a lantern, checking on his men and preparing for another long stretch of waiting. One of the crew rushes up the steps and tells him there is something out in the dark. The captain gathers a few men and they climb down to the ice with torches. They soon find a figure collapsed on the ground, barely alive, but before they can lift him, a roar rolls across the empty field. The sound is not human, so the men quickly drag the wounded man toward the ship while the captain shouts for weapons. The creature breaks through the fog and charges at them across the ice. The men fire, but the bullets hit its body without slowing it down. The thing just keeps coming, eyes fixed on the unconscious man they are trying to save. They haul the wounded stranger onto the deck as the creature claws its way up the side of the ship. One of the crew members shoots the creature, knocking it back for a moment, but the creature refuses to die. Realizing they cannot hurt it, the captain shoots at the ice, and the monster slides backward and crashes into the freezing water. Later, the rescued man finally introduces himself as Victor. He warns them that the creature they saw cannot die. He looks shaken, like a man who has been running for years. His voice breaks when he admits the reason it hunts him, as he created it. The captain tries to understand, but Victor keeps going, explaining where it all began. He speaks about the elegant home he grew up in, a castle filled with servants and cold marble floors. His mother was the only warmth in the house, gentle and loving, the person who made that place feel alive. His father, a respected surgeon, married her for the sake of appearance. To him, Victor was a project to shape, not a son to love. The man drilled lessons about anatomy into him and punished every mistake with harsh discipline. A few months later, his mother went into labor far too early. Victor ran to get his father, who rushed her into another room with the help of the servants. Victor waited outside the door, listening to muffled voices and hurried footsteps. The next morning, his mother was buried. Victor ran back to the house, tears running down his face while his father showed no emotion, seemingly already moving on. Years went by and Victor watched his father pour all his affection into William, the younger brother. William received gifts, including a small carriage for his 6th birthday, the kind of gesture Victor had never once received. That night, Victor prayed for guidance, hoping for something to lift him out of the emptiness that kept growing. The answer came in a vision the next night, his guardian angel telling him he didn't have to wait for divine permission. He could create life himself. The message stayed with him, burning at the back of his mind. Weeks later, his father died, and the fortune went straight to William. Victor was left with nothing. He survived on his own, pushing deeper into his studies until he eventually stood in front of his college peers and presented his work. He revealed a lifeless body assembled from different corpses and demonstrated how he had rerouted the nerves. When he powered his machine, the body twitched, then gasped for air. The room erupted in horror, as the professor called it an abomination and warned that no human should ever try to play the role of a creator. Victor left the school furious. On his way home that day, a man approached him, Henrik. He handed Victor a letter from William, inviting him to meet the woman he was going to marry. Henrik slipped in a quiet compliment about Victor's experiment, telling him he admired the ambition behind it. He hinted at a future meeting and a proposal that could help Victor continue his work. A few weeks later, Victor met Henrik again, this time in his photography studio. Henrik revealed a table covered with detailed nerve pathways and veins of the human body. Victor studied it closely and realized it was the missing piece he needed. Henrik agreed to fund his research on the condition that he be present for the work, eager to witness the impossible with his own eyes. Later, Victor met his brother Michael, now a skilled engineer. Michael introduced his fiancée, Elizabeth. Victor felt an immediate pull toward her. Over the next weeks, he met with Michael and Henrik to inspect an abandoned castle on the mountainside, the location Victor wanted for his new lab. Michael agreed to oversee the reconstruction, and Henrik handled the financing. During that time, Victor saw Elizabeth again at a marketplace. He invited her to lunch, and bonded quickly, sharing the same fascination with science and discovery. When he asked her to dance, she agreed, and the connection deepened. Victor kept returning to her, spending more time with her than in his lab, letting the days drift into something he knew he should avoid. Meanwhile, Michael worked tirelessly on the mountain lab, unaware that his brother was growing closer to the woman he planned to marry. But a few days later, Elizabeth went to Victor alone. She told him she couldn't keep seeing him this way. She loved Michael, and she's intending to marry him. The next day, after Elizabeth walked away from him for good, Victor threw himself into the one thing that can distract him. He returns to the mountain lab with a determination he hasn't felt in months. He stops thinking about love, marriage, or family. He focuses only on creation. He goes out into the freezing snow and collects more bodies, dragging them back to the abandoned property that has now become his secret world. By dawn, the tables are covered with limbs, organs, nerves and tissue. He studies each part, deciding what stays and what gets cut. He wants a body stronger than the first one he presented at college, a body that can endure anything. Through the day he works with a steady rhythm, trimming nerves, stitching veins, and cutting bone. The host begins to take shape on the main table, the limbs placed exactly the way Victor needs them. When the sun disappears behind the mountain, he climbs the stairs to the balcony above the table and prepares his machine. He pulls the levers down, one after the other, and the entire room fills with the sound of electricity. Power surges through the clamps and flash arcs climb across the metal plates. The creature's heart jolts under the skin as the electricity forces it to beat. Victor leans close, waiting to hear that steady rhythmic thump, but hears nothing. After hours of work and days of planning, his second attempt fails. Exhausted, Victor collapses on his bed and sleeps. Some hours later, he's awoken by his creation, as it's watching him like a child who does not understand anything except that this is the man who made him. Victor tells the creature his name and it repeats it. Later, he leads the creature down to the lower part of the castle, where the walls drip with cold water and old chains hang from the ceiling. He locks the creature in place and leaves it there in the dark, pacing upstairs as his mind spins with what he has achieved. Meanwhile, the creature tears through the water it fell into and crawls up the frozen surface. It stands in the distance watching the captain's ship, its eyes fixed on Victor's scent. Back in the present, Victor continues the story. He explains that weeks passed after he brought the creature to life. He tried teaching it commands, but it was slow. It fumbled simple instructions, moving like a child still learning to use its own limbs. Victor's patience grew thinner by the day. The more he shouted, the more the creature reacted with confusion and fear. Eventually Victor stopped himself and apologized, realizing his tone only made things worse. A few days later, Michael and Elizabeth arrived without warning. Victor greeted them at the door and quickly led Michael upstairs so he could hide his creation, but Elizabeth heard something moving in another room. Curiosity pulled her toward the noise, and when she entered, she saw the creature standing there in the dim light. Instead of running, she stepped closer. The creature stared back at her, just as fascinated. It was the first warm gaze it had ever received. That same night, Elizabeth slipped downstairs again. She found the creature still chained and trembling. She knelt beside it and whispered her name, telling it she didn't see a monster. She saw someone lost and hurting. Then she left quietly. The next morning they departed because Michael received an urgent request from a client. Not long after, Victor made a decision. The creature wasn't what he wanted. It wasn't brilliant enough. He decided to burn the castle along with the lab. He marched down to the creature and gave it one last chance. Say something besides his name, but the creature spoke only his name again. Soon, Victor poured gas around the castle and the flames crawled up the walls. He stepped outside and watched the explosion tear through the building, certain that the problem he created was gone. Meanwhile, the creature walks in the office and interrupts the story to tell his side. He explains that when the lab exploded, he tore the chains apart and crawled through the vents. The fire burst behind him as he escaped into a river. The current washed him down the mountain and he woke hours later on a shore, confused but alive. He wandered into a forest where everything felt new. He heard birds and saw deer. For a moment, he felt peace, but that peace didn't last. A hunter shot a deer in front of him and then fired at him too. The creature stumbled away and hid in a shed beside a small farmhouse. The owners returned later, but didn't know he was inside. He stayed silent, listening through the walls. Over days, he learned their speech. He began sneaking out to help them with chores, stacking wood, repairing tools, and cleaning the yard. In the morning, the family thought a forest spirit had done the work. They left offerings of food to thank it. One day, the family left for a long journey, leaving only the old blind grandfather behind. That night, the creature stepped into the house. The old man already knew he was there, as he recognized the scent. He welcomed him without fear and spoke to him kindly. Over the next days, he taught the creature to read and speak. He taught him about the world, about faith and about Adam and Eve. The creature tells the captain he had never felt loved before. The old man was the first warmth he had ever known and wished Victor had treated him the same way. Eventually the creature decided to search for Victor and ask why he abandoned him. He found the ruined castle and discovered a letter containing Victor's address, but when he returned to the old man's home, wolves were circling. They attacked the old man and the creature fought them off. Moments later, the family returned and saw the corpse. They thought the creature killed him and attacked. He held back until one of them shot him in the head and he collapsed. Hours later, he woke up and mourned the one person who cared for him and walked away broken-hearted. Days later, he tracked Victor down and demanded a companion, the same way Adam had Eve. He begged for someone who could end the loneliness he was cursed with, but Victor refused. The creature's anger exploded and he threw Victor across the room. Elizabeth ran in, shocked to see the creature alive. She wrapped her arms around it in relief. Victor panicked and fired his gun, but the bullet struck Elizabeth. The room filled with people and Victor lied, screaming that the creature killed her. They attacked the creature, but it threw them aside. Michael hurts his head and Victor rushed to him, only to hear Michael whisper that Victor was the real monster, as all of this is his fault and dies. The creature carried Elizabeth into the wild and took her to a cave. She bled out in his arms, whispering her final words. Victor arrived later, determined to kill the creature. The creature stepped from the shadows and broke Victor's nose. He told him he would make him suffer for everything he had done. A few nights later, he dragged Victor across the snow into freezing darkness and strapped a bomb to himself. If it killed him, he would be free. If it didn't, he would continue hunting Victor. The bomb exploded, but he survived again. In the present, the captain finally understands the truth. Victor also does and apologizes for everything. He tells the creature he wishes he had been the father he never had himself. He begs the creature to live whatever life he can. The creature accepts, and Victor dies a few minutes later. The creature then walks out onto the deck and climbs down to the ice and pushes the ship free. The hull breaks loose and drifts into open water. The crew stands in awe as the creature turns and disappears into the endless white of the North Pole, understanding that he will walk this world alone forever. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe for more notifications. Until next time. See you soon.